So this morning we're going to look at a reality. But let's just see, there's a little more here about Israel, because the Apostle Paul said this is not a history book. This is not recorded about Israel just to tell you what Israel did some thousands of years ago. Because he said, you will find that Israel becomes an example for you.
Yes, it does.
That really we've done exactly what Israel did.
Yes.
No different. So it says here then, they all drank the same spiritual drink. They drank from that spiritual rock which was Christ. But God was not pleased with them. And so he said these things are for examples. Verse 11, these things then happened for examples and are written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the world are come. Wherefore, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed, lest he fall. So we may be able to stand at a moment in time, but not be able to continue standing as we live life today. That's our problem. So what is it? There has to come into our life a reality. The reality for Israel was there. The cloud represented the presence of God. It was the cloud of great glory in which he always moves. It produced for them the atmosphere of God's presence, so that none of the nations of the earth could touch them unless God allowed them to. You see, they were walking in the presence of God. The one thing that I was impressed about was when I went to India in 1968 and traveled with a man called Baksh Singh, who was a man that had gone to England to study, became an engineer. He traveled here to the United States, was here for several years, and then God said, I'm going to take you back to India. I want you to go back now and minister to your people. So he went back to India. This is the man that God put me with for 3 months, which had such a dramatic effect upon my life. He didn't teach me doctrine. He taught me a way to live and a way to function. That's what he taught me. I would go to bed at night, you know, after the meetings, and we'd been talking, and it was late, and I would go to bed, and he'd be on his knees. I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and he's on his knees. I'm thinking, Lord, I think that man's been on his knees all night. I don't know, but I think so. He was an amazing man. He carried such a presence with him. Just to let you know what kind of a man he was. He went home, of course, from America. He went back home. But he's a Christian now. He comes from the high-ranking Hindu family. So, of course, when he goes back home, says, Pope, I'm a Christian. Well, his father said, son, you have never been born. You are not even going to be registered as our family from this day on. You're dead as far as we're concerned. Wow. And you are to leave this home, and we never want to see your face again. Well, he expected that, of course. That wasn't strange. But the father said to him, before you go, we're going to have a meal together. And so they prepared this meal, beautiful meal. So they all sat down together, and they all began to eat. I'm sorry, one man began to eat, and that was Baksh Singh. He began to eat, and he was enjoying his meal, but the others were watching him. They were waiting for him to fall off that chair, because they had put enough poison in that meal to kill an oxen. And he just kept on eating until he finished. And they're looking at him. And the father got up and said, your God must be a powerful God. The whole family was converted at that time. The whole family.
Yes, Lord.
You see, he carried the presence. He carried the presence. I traveled with that man for 3 months. I would love to have stayed there. But I was with him for 3 months, and the impact of that man upon my life was dramatic, to say the least. When I came home, I was a different man. And that was when the change began in my life, very slowly at that beginning. But that was the first thing. It was so amazing. So we're talking about a real change that takes place in our life.
Yes, sir.
And I'm wondering today, how many of you have experienced that change, which actually changes your nature and your character? For instance, I say to people today, do you realize that when I was a young man, that I was so nervous that I could never have stood up like this in front of an audience. It would have killed me. I had an inferior complex like you wouldn't believe. I mean, everybody was up there and I'm down here, you know. I'm like the worm and the rest are like the birds flying, you know. That was me. And people say, brother, I don't know, are you telling us the truth? I'm telling you the God's honest truth. You see, my nature, my very character was changed. If I went to, you know, say a doctor's surgery, you know, I almost crawl into that man's office. Why? Because I felt so inferior. This guy knows so much and I know nothing, you know. And I would just sit there and he would do whatever he needed to do. Have you had God change your character? Because many people suffer from an inferiority complex, which means that your concept of yourself is way out of whack. In other words, God made you in the beginning. Genesis 1:26. He said, let us make man. And that man is you. God spoke a word to produce the man. You are the product of a word that God spoke.
That's true.
You're the product of a word God spoke. And whatever God says, whatever he speaks, cannot return to him until it's accomplished what it was sent to do.
Yes, sir.
And then it can return unto the Lord. So if you are the product of that word that God spoke, then you are not the person that perhaps you think you are today. You are another creation from another world. You are in fact spirit. I want you to turn to the book of Revelation chapter 4. After this is John the apostle speaking. After this he said, I looked, and behold, there was a door in heaven opened. This morning, God wants to open a door for you. A door is an entrance into something. The door not only is an entrance into something, but it lets me know that there is something beyond the wall.
Yes, sir.
Something on that other side. And for many of God's people today, they have never known what is on the other side of that wall. And the wall is simply our mortality. It sets up a wall around us, which means that it puts a limitation upon our life, whatever it is. And we cannot see beyond that. John said, there was a door open in heaven. God wants to open a door for you this morning. A door into a world that you have never seen. A door into a world that you've not even thought about.